Well, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today, and taking the time to have a listen to this panel discussion on automating your practice. Hopefully, I know the majority of you, but for those that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting before, my name is Tom Port. I'm the VP of Sales for Auto Entry North America, and I'm delighted and actually quite honoured in many ways to be able to get the opportunity to host this panel session for you. In this session, what we want to do is we want to have an open discussion on automation. And what we're going to allow you to do is hear directly from your peers and see how they have automated their practice, how they've automated manual processes, and really, just focusing on what the day-to-day looks like by leveraging automation and leveraging technology. So we're very excited to have you here today. And hopefully, and I'm actually very confident about this, you're going to get the opportunity to learn a few things from your peers. So before we get started, we hope you could just quickly drop us a line in the question and answer box about what part of the country you're joining us from today, what part of Canada. I'll get started. I'm actually not joining you from Canada. I'm joining you from the very sunny state of Arizona. So yeah, it's always nice to see what different parts of the country people are joining from. And now, most importantly, I want to introduce our panelists. We have three very illustrious guests joining us today. Firstly, we have an absolute darling of automation that I've worked with quite closely with regards to auto entry, and that is Sarah Gibb of Flowworks Bookkeeping and Consulting. We have another absolute rock star when it comes to automation. We have Janet Lynch, CPB of Lynch's Accounting Solutions. And of course, last but not least, we have a member of the Mueller dynasty with us, Bianca Mueller of CPB of Books by Bianca. So, without any more chatting from me, I'll get everyone to introduce themselves. So, Sarah, perhaps you can kick us off and tell us quickly about yourself and a bit about your business.
Sure, no problem. So those who don't know me, my name is Sarah Gibb. I am a bookkeeper based out of Chemainus, BC, which is on Vancouver Island. I've been a bookkeeper for about 14 years now. I have been out on my own for 5 years now. I kind of, just started out with 2 clients, and that blossomed into 6, and 6 blossomed into 10. And here I am 5 years later on the peak of 50 clients. I would say a good part of my business is automated in some format or another. Even if the books are desktop, like receipts are brought in by automation. I am a one-woman show, so automation was definitely a big part of what I do and why I do in order to keep my sanity. That's for sure.
Sarah, I have to say that is incredibly impressive. 2 to 50. I know the audience is going to get a ton of value in listening to your experience. Brilliant. Janet, how about you next? Tell the audience about yourself.
All right, so my name is Janet Lynch, and I am from the east coast of Canada in a little town called Miramichi, New Brunswick. I've run my business for about 22 years. I do have an storefront office with, right now I have 3 employees. So I would say that I'm probably more on the beginning end of the automation and trying to get there. So we do have some form of automation on some of our clients, and we just strive every day to try and get a little bit more and get us to the point where we want to be. But it's all good, it's all fun, and looking forward to this session.
Fantastic. And look, again, I think that why we've got different levels of automation, if you will, in terms of brilliant to hear from you. And of course, as I said, Bianca, last but not least, I'm sure most people know you as well, but please, give us a bit about yourself.
Yes, there's a bit of a genetic legacy going on here, I suppose. I learned by osmosis. Yes, yeah, exactly. So I'm located in British Columbia, Burnaby, BC, and I like Sarah. I started small and escalated, but over the last 5 years, I've actually transitioned my practice further, where I have actually gotten away from having lots of sole proprietor clients and having more select few roles where I'm more of a CFO and controller that are much more high volume, more almost even medium-sized business. So that's sort of where I'm at right now with my practice. So I'm trying to automate not only accounting practices and protocols and processes, but also things in relation to HR and other things. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. So you're kind of like you're gravitating to other areas of the business to, ultimately do what we're all trying to do here, which is provide value for your clients.
And create sanity, like Sarah. The bottom line is create sanity.
Who doesn't like sanity?
We're trying.
Absolutely. Well, look, thank you very much. As I said, we're really delighted to have you here today. And I know this session we're going to be able to uncover, a lot of value for the audience. So getting right into it, guys. I mean, I suppose the first thing that I think it's worth talking about is, let's just start really at the simple end, if you will. So perhaps we can get, Sarah, if you can take this question first, perhaps you can tell us about, what a typical day in your practice looks like.
Yeah. For me, the first thing that I like to do is go into my emails and flag what I feel like is important for the day. The second thing I do is I actually, my day starts the night before, because I actually go into auto entry and see what clients of mine have actually put in the work to upload, what they need to upload, and just kind of go in and just have a quick view. And then I get their files out, and then I start their files the next day, making sure if their file is not up to par, then I usually, before I sign off the day before, as I shoot them a little reminder, in hopes that when I get up in the morning that the receipts will be there. If they're not, then I just don't work on their file and they suffer the consequences. Like I'm not a babysitter anymore, basically. I'm like, I remind once, hey, you don't have your receipts uploaded. I'm going to be working on your file tomorrow. If it's not ready, then you get pushed to the bottom of the pile and I'll go and work on somebody who put the time in to actually have stuff ready on time, right? So I'm basically, the way I've shifted my day-to-day is I'm holding them more and more accountable for their actions, rather than putting it all on my plate, because it was just way too stressful.
Mm-hmm. And I think we need to get that on your business card, not a babysitter.
That's
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful.
There are times I just want to scream it, but I don't.
Right. They'll get the point. Bianca, there's the same question to you. I know you giggled there about the babysitter comment, but I do think it's, all jokes aside, it is kind of interesting. What does your typical day look like? It sounds like you're using a lot of tech.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit different in the sense that because the level at which I work with my clients, there's a whole slew of people that are beneath me kind of getting the documentation and everything ready. There's a lot of approval processes with payables and those sorts of workflows and protocols. So my clients tend to submit payables on a monthly basis. So what happens is at the beginning of every month, they go to, a certain person in the office, and then it kind of makes its way up the approval process. And once everything's ready to be approved and go, then it makes its way into a digital format where I then process it remotely. And that goes into an accounting software and then into a payment software as well. So that's sort of my hierarchy of how the process works. And by the time it gets digitized, there's a lot of work on my end of validation and verification and all that fun stuff. So that usually takes a few weeks and then, a few hours here every day. And yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, look, totally makes sense. And Janet, do you mind if, giving us a bit of an understanding, because I know you said, you're at the beginning stages of automation. So I'd be interested in, sort of what does your day look like?
Well, I'm certainly not at the level like Sarah is, and my employees are, we're working more internally and taking some of the paperwork that the clients drop off and digitizing it through auto entry or receipt bank or one of those. But I think when I listen to Sarah and say, you're making it more accountable for your client, that I think that's probably one thing that's holding us back, is making them accountable to get those receipts up. We start with a client who it looks really good that, they're going to take it on, they're going to do it daily or weekly, and it doesn't work out that way. So we end up, fighting with ourselves. And I have a cat, so sorry.
They echoed your sentiment there for sure.
Yeah. I'm home. She's not usually. She's usually home all by herself. So anyway, sorry.
No worries at all. But that's interesting. That sort of accountability piece. And Sarah, maybe you could you comment on that at all? Like, because I remember meeting you at sort of the first stages of, when you start looking at automation and, all of that wonderful stuff. How did you, focus on the client accountability piece? How did you get them rather to take more accountability for their work coming into you?
Draw a line.
That's one thing. You had to draw a line, but two, at that point, the ones that I started switching to the cloud, I had already established a very solid relationship, and there was a lot of trust. So when I came to them and said, okay, it's time that we need to change things up a bit, majority of them said, no problem, just tell me what you need me to do and we'll do it, because we already had that trust relationship and they already knew like how I did things and that kind of stuff. I had a few that kind of fought it, but when I used the approach, and I've said this before to you, and I know you've said it, if you can take a picture and load it on your Facebook, because I see you loading. I did say to one client, I said, I see you loading selfies on your Facebook all the time. You can take a picture of your receipt. And he was like, yeah, you're right. And, he's a painter, and, it was really hard in the beginning to get him to get the receipts, because he would go home at night and he'd unload them and then he would leave them on his desk. And then I said to him, I said, okay, I want you to spend one day, or, and just every time you're in a store making a purchase, when you get to your truck, the first thing you're going to do before you start your ignition is you're going to pull out your phone, you're going to take a picture. Then you're going to shove the receipt in your pocket. And it became more of like a daily routine. And it's gotten to the point that he's taking pictures of everything now. I know we've had to scale it back. I'm like, okay, I don't need to see, your, medical, your prescription purchase, those kinds of things. But he's gotten so hardcore into this process that all he does, every time he makes a purchase, he goes to his truck and he takes a picture of it. And we went a whole month with not one receipt missed. And I was like, I was giving him virtual high fives, and, I was ready to go take a case of beer and drop it off at his house, because I was so proud of him for making that transition.
Absolutely.
One of my clients, I had a problem transitioning them when I stopped going into the office a few years ago, and I just bit the bullet, and I actually gifted them a scanner because it was well worth my time.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried that too. I bought the people a scanner, and anyways, it just, maybe I wasn't on it enough, but we've tried that too. So,
and that's really interesting, because I think it sounds to me, from having conversations with numerous bookkeepers, that this can be a bit of a problem for them. Bianca, just to go a little bit deeper on what you just said there. So you bought them a scanner, and then what? How did you get them to do it? Like, how did you get them to use it? Because even I know for us at Auto Entry, we can see problems where getting clients to use it as much as possible. So how did you kind of cross that bridge? Was it like do it or not, or was it like carrot and stick approach? Or
so it's kind of the different solution. Like, these aren't the little receipts that they're using with their visa. This is like a huge automotive company that has a million nuts and bolts that are each have their own little piece of paper coming through the place. And For them, it wasn't a matter of doing it daily because there's a lot of returns and a lot of credits that have to be cross-referenced. So what worked best for them was to wait until after the end of the month, and the first week of the following month, everything would get scanned and reconciled in Receipt Bank or auto entry. And that was the only way that we figured out it would work, because by that time, all the paperwork was there. All the missing information would have been there. They just have a file that they pile it all into as the days go on. And then at the end of the month, it all goes in. You don't even have to organize it. That's the fantastic part of a scanner. You don't even have to organize it. You throw it into your digital software and then you sort it. So yeah.
Absolutely.
That worked for them. That was the only way that we could make it work. If I had to get them to do it on a daily basis, it was way too daunting and it was way too much. It was one more thing on their plate that just didn't add up to the results that I needed. So
right.
So what I'm sorry, Jack. No, you go ahead.
I think training your clients to do it and taking the time to sit down with them at the beginning, I think we're kind of missing that part, but, and then following up, right? Sometimes we get so busy that we forget to follow up and make sure they're doing it right. Or if something has been uploaded that's incorrect or should be done a different way, it's getting back to them right away as to the better way to do it. So I don't know.
No, I think it totally makes sense. So just to cover this up, what I'm hearing here is like, making sure for the client that you're, as to Sarah's point, keeping it simple. If you can take a photo, you can upload data, but also having like a robust sort of process for them to follow. That's sort of that's the takeaways I'm taking from here. Would you agree? Yeah. I
think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fantastic. And also as well, I'm really intrigued in this because, I think sometimes in the cloud accounting space and the bookkeeping space that there's a huge amount of apps out there. There's a huge amount of software that, even for me on the technology side, it can be quite overwhelming, when we were going to conferences and seeing all these weird and wonderful solutions that can do everything for us. But, Bianca, I know you've been doing this for a while. I know you've been working, with accounting tech for a while. How do you evaluate the solutions in the market, and how do you sort of make the decision to implement them in your business?
A lot of research. I do find that our Facebook forums are so valuable. Getting user experiences and, just switching thoughts with people that are in our industry, in our clients' industries, dealing with same types of scenarios, using different kinds of products and solutions. We've all trialed and errored everything out there. So bouncing ideas off other CPBs and other users of software is always a go-to for me, a first go-to. And once I find and vet those comments and suggestions, then I usually go and dig a little bit deeper and find online reviews. I contact vendors. I get, demos. I will sign up for free trials. There's definitely a lot of going on. And I'll, create fake companies to test the products in. It's a lot of legwork, but it can definitely be worthwhile.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. No, I totally understand that. And Janet, I know you're, as you said at the sort of starting, but so you're taking your first foray into this kind of the world, if you will. What have you been using to sort of evaluate what software you wanted to use?
Well, much the same that Bianca's doing, like the Sage forum or IPBC forum or CPP forum, the workflow, like the online Facebook has been a big thing. Conferences, I do a lot of research as well and just kind of see if it's going to be a fit, is something I want to continue on. I kind of look like we are Sage users, so we kind of see what's going to fit in with Sage and we go from there. I don't want to get into, having, umpteen thousand different apps and only, not be very good at any of them. I want to have a core that we know well and can use well. So I've been trying to stick with 2 or 3 good ones. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sarah, the same question. Is there anything else that you're doing differently from Bianca and Janet, or are you all kind of following the same playbook to evaluate your software choices?
To a certain extent, I think, yeah, I do the same. A couple big things that I look into when I'm evaluating software is, one, can I use it for more than one client? Because I really don't want to pay for something, then use it for just one client. I look for something that's all kind of a roundabout that I can use for not every client, but at least a few.
Yeah.
So that it makes it my money worth, you know, what I'm investing into the app. The second thing that I look at is, and I don't know if a lot of people do this, but I look at the support team. I've signed up for apps and waited 2 weeks to get a response on support. And if that's the way it is, then I'm not going to sign up with. I'm not going to spend money and pay on something and have to wait 2 weeks if I'm stuck on something. Your guys' team, I have to say, is pretty amazing. And and I think, you know, a month ago I was stuck on something and it was midnight, because I do work at night a little bit in the evenings. It was midnight and a bank statement didn't push through. And I hopped on chat, and your guys' chat, because the way you guys are set up around the world and the time zones and stuff, you know, your team knows who I am at this point. And all I had to say is my bank statement's stuck, and, you know, your team hopped on and said, no problem, Sarah, give me 5 minutes. And by 12:05, I had my bank statement. And that's going above and beyond in my mind. You know, I wouldn't necessarily expect to have chat on at midnight, but it was definitely like, that's the kind of response that, you know, I love, you know, the turnaround. If I have a question, I need to know that it will be answered in at least within 24 hours if I'm stuck on something.
That's a good point.
Sarah brought up a comment that, you know, is kind of hitting the waves, I guess you can say. And that's like billing your clients for your software. So there's bookkeepers do it two ways. I don't absorb any software costs for my clients. They all pay their own. So as far as bringing that into the consideration of the value of the situation, like, that's on them, and I make it very clear. Whereas a lot of bookkeepers will take that on and put it in their practice because they want that scalable. So that's a little bit of a difference between some bookkeepers out there. So I thought it was an interesting fact.
I look at what the benefits are for a bookkeeper. Like, if I'm getting a bigger discount as a bookkeeper as opposed to my client, then I will, like, for example, Very Clock does commission rebates. So I would rather take it on and pay for it and take the rebates, and then still charge my clients, you know, full price for what it is. So there's a little bit of a discount to me. With auto entry, though, I do give my clients the option. They can sign up for their own account and pay for it, or I can sign up and then it gets added onto their bill. And so I have a mix of both.
Yeah, because there's been a really big hiccup in the term ownership of the data lately, and what happens when you depart from clients and all those sorts of things that are attached to software and logins and credentials. So for me, yeah, I've always that's been always sort of a thing of mine.
And we do it both ways. We have the client pay for it, and some of them we do pay on their behalf, so, and charge it through.
Completely makes sense. Yeah, and look, I'm glad that we moved on to that side point. I think it's really important. But a question I have for you all, and I'm sure tons of people, you know, are going to be interested in this one, and it's kind of the elephant in the room. You know, we're all meant to be together in some room in Alberta or wherever the CPB holds their events now, but we're not. We're all working from home. We're having this call from home. So, yeah. Other than this, have you had to sort of pivot and change your business due to the recent pandemic, or? And Janet, if we can start with yourself.
Well, seeing as we were in office, we did have to pivot a bit and figure out how to get people to work from home, and it actually went pretty smoothly. I was pretty impressed with what we were able to do, and, you know, using our remote data access for our files helped a lot. Our other, like, we use Dropbox, like, all those allowed us to work from home without having to be in the space. So we did have to pivot that way for sure. And it really just kind of enforces the idea that maybe I am on the right track, and going to start moving a little bit further that way. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Installing a new VPN today to help with that as well. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, sounds like certainly ahead of the curve in that. And Sarah, how about you? Was there any sort of working processes you had to change at all, or?
So I had an office in town, in the town that I live in, and I loved my office, but I ultimately ended up closing it, and my husband and I renovated an extra space in my home to move to a home office for me. Being that when the pandemic hit and the fact that I had an 8-year-old child at home, there was no way that I could be at my office more than 50% of the time. And to me, that was just a waste of my revenue to spend it on an office that I physically couldn't be at. I was really, really upset at first, but once I got settled at home and got settled into a routine, got settled with my daughter, my daughter's older. I don't have a toddler running around. The house is quiet. It actually is working out better. And, I don't think I will go back to an office space at this time. I think I will leave it. I was really nervous about how my clients felt about it, and all of them were quite fine. The ones that still needed to drop off things here and there, my husband built a drop box so nobody had to actually physically knock on the door. Those kinds of things. So it's worked out quite well. And I've transitioned a lot of my clients to Zoom calls. And that's been my biggest transition from having an office to having a home office, is that I use Zoom now for probably about 90% of my business meetings. And that's gone really, really well. It's less distracting too. When you have an office, clients would just tend to pop by because they would see my car out front. And you don't want to be rude, but, a 5-minute drop by to drop off paperwork sometimes turns into a 45-minute shoot the breeze.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you've gotten nothing done. And I find that my days are I'm getting a lot more done in my days because I'm not having those drop bys, and I'm having scheduled Zoom calls, from this time to this time, and they know to be there, and they know we need to discuss the things we need to discuss and move on our merry way. Yes, I miss my chats with my clients, but the relationships are still there, so.
That's good. I like that.
And Bianca, how about you? Was there anything you sort of needed to change?
Yeah.
Digitized.
So for me, I've always had a home office, but I also had my very own office at my clients because I had scaled back and I had, bigger, smaller businesses. So I had my own physical office in each of my clients' places. And it was only my office. I would go, I didn't share it with anybody. It was great. So I miss the camaraderie of actually going to an office. And I didn't have to go all the time. I could work remotely whenever I needed to or had to, but I love people. So the physical distance is hard for me. But technology-wise, I really embraced the Microsoft 365 platform. I've really ramped that up. The whole Teams and collaborative, bookings, all those things, everything that Microsoft has to offer in that platform has been really valuable to me, and I've been slowly learning my way through a lot of that. So,
yeah.
That's great.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like relatively everyone's been pretty successful in terms of pivoting to the new normal. So that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. Next, I suppose, moving slightly on, I think where a lot of from my conversations with bookkeepers, where a lot of people get stuck is perhaps they've been able to select the apps and solutions they're using, but the implementation perhaps hasn't gone as smoothly as they would like, or has taken a bit longer than they would like. So, just to start off, so we can totally understand the sort of tech stacks we're working with, Janet, let's start with you. Janet, what apps and accounting solutions are you using?
Well, we use a Sage 50 desktop. We also use Sage Business Cloud. We are using auto entry, Receipt Bank, and we do use HubDoc. There's some features in HubDoc that we like as well. So. Okay.
Yeah. So just to clarify, you said you were a beginner.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're using a lot.
Well, those are the ones we've settled on.
I think you're modest. Sarah, I know, of course, you use auto entry. We work together on that one. But what other tech are you using?
So yes, auto entry. I use entry for majority of what I do. I do, like Janet, I use HubDoc simply because I like their fetching. They can fetch just about anything. I know I've made requests to the auto entry team about some fetching and stuff like that. the ultimate goal is to move off of HubDoc and into you guys for fetching. As well as I use VeryClock, which is a timesheet applicator. I carry a heavy amount of subcontract trades, construction industry, where they're on multiple job sites a day doing multiple things. And about a year and a half ago, I just was done with paper time slips and being late and having people texting me pictures of their time slips and the bull crap that was written on the time slips, you know. Now any client, like I just signed on a new construction client, and the first thing I said to them is, within the first week, the paper time slips are going. You guys are on VeryClock, and this is how it's going to be. And staff grumbles and complains, and they fight it. But ultimately, again, it's based off of my relationship with my clients, and also me setting that example in our first meeting that, you know, if you want me to be your bookkeeper, this is how I do things. This is how I streamline efficiently. And you're going to find that using these apps are going to be a lot easier for you. In addition to that, I also use Lightspeed, which is a POS system, and it carries inventory. And I love Lightspeed. It's for retail and for restaurant, and I use it for both. It has an integration with Sage, which is amazing. I also use the Wave. I've just started using the Wave app for payments for that. So that's where I'm at with my tech stack these days.
I think I'm just way too passive. But
look, you have to start somewhere.
The more you automate, the more you like become addicted to more automation. It's really
like Pringles. Yeah.
I'm very, very forward in my first meetings now with clients. And it's nice that I'm in a position, and I know not a lot of people are, and maybe, you know, 5 years ago when I had 2 clients, I wouldn't be this forceful. But now on the brink of 50 clients, I can pick and choose who I want. Like if someone comes through my door and I'm excited, they're excited about their business. Yeah. And I say to them, this is how I do things. I automate and I do this, and and they say, I don't want to do that. Then I'm very polite. I say, okay, let's see if I can find you a referral, you know, or that kind of thing. Like it's not worth I know now it's not worth the stress and once you give in to do what they want to do, then you're already setting that example that they can walk all over you. And I've learned the hard way over the years that that's not the example you want to set. You want to set that example in your very first meeting. This is the way you do things. This is how you operate. You want to outline it in your engagement letter, and so that they know how you run, you know, your business.
Sure.
I think it's a lot, you know, even the follow-up after that. So this is what we do, and this is how I do it. But what happens when they don't do it, you know, and how do you stay on them to make it work for you, right?
Oh, all of a sudden,
that's the extra time. That's the
issue.
Pardon me?
All of a sudden, it'll become a compliance issue because you're now late on GST, you're now late on payroll, but they have to literally learn that on their own.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And I think, sorry, Biang, but I'd love to hear your opinion on this, because I think that you said something earlier about buying the scanner. So you obviously took the sort of bull by the horns in that case, but you know, when you were starting out,
they paid me back when they realized how valuable it was, but because I knew it would be, and I made that agreement going in. I'm like, here you go. And if if you end up finding this valuable, or you realize that it's actually beneficial for our working relationship, then you can pay me back. And they did, no problem.
Absolutely. And just to wait on that though, did you receive, you've obviously been using automation technology for a while. Did you receive any sort of feedback or objections or issues from your team or from your clients when you first started using technology?
Yeah, obviously, my guinea pig client, we all have a guinea pig client that we started with on the whole automation, train. And he literally had a check stamper. And I was like, no, I'm not taking this job with that here. Sorry. And I was like, and he knew that it was a little bit archaic, but that was security to him. He was like, that's how I protect my fortune, my family business, my life. That was his thing. And that was really hard. So it was baby steps. It was like, okay, we're going to order computer printed checks. Like, that's literally the baby steps that it took. Okay. And then it was like, okay, we're not going to, we had a storage business as well. This guy, he had 2 businesses. So it was like all these people were manually typing in their credit cards. I'm like, no, this is all going to go online now. And to take that, he wanted that off his plate. That was a lot of additional work that he didn't think was necessary. So once I automated his whole storage business, and he literally gave it to me and really put full trust in me, he realized that I was going to be beneficial in his other businesses. And that's where I started making other baby steps. And it was the online exchange of money was very, very nerve-wracking to him. He's Italian. He would have preferred to have run a cash-based business. So it took about 5 years. So you really have to be patient with some clients.
Yeah.
But now now he travels the world and just expects more automation. He's like, he doesn't travel the world right now, but like I gave him the freedom to semi-retire. And he has confidence now that his business is accessible to him at any time. And I have real-time data for him at any time. And I gave him a lot of security in other ways. So
Awesome.
You really have to have the trust between you and your client to do these kinds of things. And then if the client is holding back and not trusting you or trusting the system, then you really need to take a step back and evaluate your relationship with the client. I find that is a lot of it is fear, and fear of change. But if they don't have the trust in you, then maybe it's a reminder that you need to work on that relationship a bit better.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely. It all starts with relationship. It all starts with relationship. But look, let's address, what were the challenges you had? So, when it first came to implement this type of technology, I'm sure there was a lot. And Janet, maybe you can weigh in on this one. What was the kind of difficulties you had when you first started?
I think our biggest challenge either was like my employees, it's always easier to just manually put it in. Like it was quicker to put it in manually than it was to like take the staple off, get rid of the little receipt, organize them, put them through. So I haven't drilled that into they haven't figured that out yet. So they resist me on that one there. And I think maybe the follow-up. I'm not following up enough to push them along and try it again, and figure out that system. But what I have done is I've hired somebody that's going to be, her specific tasks are going to be to figure out these apps and then how it's going to work in our business and how it's going to help us get down the road, because nobody's really taking the time right now to do it, where everyone's just so busy. So I think that's another constraint. Everybody's so busy.
Good for you. That's great.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So
yeah,
I just finally said, you know what, this is never going to happen unless somebody sits down and figures it all out. So that's what I did.
That's my evenings and weekends.
Yeah.
But I think that raises an interesting point. So for you, Janet, in your business, you have a few people, it's kind of like having someone that has ownership of that. But you mentioned something there about follow-up. And Sarah and Bianca, I'd love your opinion on that. So what I'm hearing by follow-up is you're suggesting the idea for a piece of technology for the client, but then actually following up and making sure they're using it is the sort of challenge you're experiencing. Bianca, Sarah, do you have any opinion on that, or any sort of comments how you've managed maybe perhaps been able to overcome that?
I have a simple thing. I won't take time. Sarah can go after me. It's when I showed them the continuity from end to end results. Yeah. They were blown away. So it was spelling out the entire equation and not just understanding the efficiency within each piece. When my clients realized that they could have the payment approval process and have the original receipt attached digitally at the end of the transaction, and then be able to look at it 6 months later and not have to dig it and find it and remember it, that to them became more valuable in their business than the entire process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It totally makes sense. Yeah. And Sarah, you say the same question to you in terms of sort of follow-up. Is there any words of wisdom you could share, or?
I don't approach it as a suggestion. I approach it. Maybe you call me a little more.
her.
I'm a little more forceful. I'm
I
very
love it.
polite.
I love that.
Very polite in what I do, and I say, basically, I've done the research. This is and I approach it like this is gonna take so much time off of our plates. It's gonna automize. It's gonna streamline. It's gonna make your life easier. It's gonna make my life easier. And a lot of times, like, I don't approach it, well, what do you think? Do you want to, it's like, this is what we should do. And this is basically what we are going to do. And I get very little pushback for it. And I think our clients respect us more when we come to them with the knowledge and the expertise and make the suggestion that this is what's best for your company, because that's what they want. That's what they pay us for. They want us to not say, hey, well, I think this might work. And what do you think? Do you think, that's not a confident bookkeeper. A confident bookkeeper's coming to them saying, I've researched this app. I've looked into it. Here's how it's going to go into your business. Here's how it's going to be beneficial to you. Here's what it's going to save you. And here it's also, at the end of the day, it's going to make me a lot more happy.
It's like there should be like a happy wife, happy life. Should be like a happy bookkeeper. Like we got to find a thing.
That's right. And that's right. And I think, that confidence needs to come from you. If you're not confident in using an app and using, applications and technology, the client is going to pick that up, and then they're not going to want to do it because you're not getting your confidence. You have to approach it with confidence that you've done the research and you know how this is going to benefit their business. So I never come off as this is a suggestion. It's usually in the politest way that I can come off, and this is how I do things, and this is what's best for your business, and they go with it. So
throwing in having a hard audit trail like behind you by having that automation and continuity always helps seal
compliance. Yes, compliance. Yes.
Absolutely. No, that's fantastic. I love that bit, that sort of stick approach, Sarah, that you're following a bit more.
I promise I'm not a mean person.
I know you're. I absolutely.
But confidence is a big thing, and being confident with what you're using, and when you run into problems or your client runs into a problem, you want to be able to answer the questions, right? Yeah. So, and I think in our office, we're just not at that high confidence level to say, this is what I think you should be doing, and this is where we're going. So.
And I think that's where going back to choosing your apps comes back to, because you need to choose an app that you have confidence in, that can do what you need it to do, because then you're going to be confident and you're going to go back to your client with that confidence. So if you got using an app and it's not only doing the job half the time, you're not going to have that confidence in the app either.
Totally agree. Totally agree with you. Confidence is key in so many things. But changing track a little bit, because we've I know this conversation could go on for hours and hours and hours. I actually wish it could.
Me too.
There's I want to just talk also about Sage Accounting, because look, in our tech stacks, when we're talking about them, everyone here uses Sage Accounting. I'd be really intrigued to understand from each of you, how has Sage Accounting helped streamline your workflows? And Janet, maybe you can kick us off. How's it helped?
The Sage Accounting, the online.
Yes.
For the clients that we do have, it helps them because they have access to their financials right away. They don't have to, they can go in and see everything. So it eliminates them calling us or us having to print and fax, or not fax, email, whatever you're using. I'm dating myself even more with the fax, but so I think that's been our key there, that the access for our clients, they've liked that.
Fantastic. And Bianca, perhaps you can weigh in on that, the same question.
Yes, exact same thing, but also just the attachment ability to have the document attached to the transaction. It's so important. I can't be happier. It drove me crazy, every other software, and having to have pieces of paper attached to all the documentation, the source documents. Now they're aligned with the actual entries in the accounting software. For me, that's super important, because I then integrate it into a payment solution where it takes that receipt along with it and pays the bill and is ready to be authorized remotely. So there's a whole sequence of events that I need to happen, and Sage is that, middle important integral piece.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Sarah, what has been your experience with Sage Accounting? I know your auto entry account quite intimately. So I know you've got some AE accounts hooked up to Sage Accounting. So what's your experience been?
Definitely less paperwork. That's like physical paper. On the client side, yes, the access anytime, anywhere is amazing. I have a construction client, and when I first brought him on a few years ago, he was doing quotes in Microsoft Word, and then when the job was done, he would come home at the end of the day and send me an email, and then I would have to create the invoice in Sage 50 and then send it back to him, to which he would send it to the client. When we moved to the cloud, I told him, okay, you're going to do your own quotes. You're going to do them in Sage. You're going to send the quote to the client. The client's going to approve it. Once the job's done, you're going to hit send, and it's done. And we've completely taken that off my plate. Mm-hmm. And it's so much easier because we're not retyping the quote from Word into Sage and then having to email it to him, then having the email, we can send it directly to the client from that. And not only that, when the payment comes in, the bank automatically matches it. So It's not like I have to trace bank deposits anymore either. So that has been huge for me, and for him to be able to, send his quote or send his invoice from his phone at the end of the week. One day he phoned me and said, I was up, we were a job, I sent the invoice from my phone. The client came outside and gave me a check as I was loading up my truck. It's just that easy. Whereas before he would have had to go home, ask me to do it, it would have been, a day or two turnaround. Then he would have sent it, you're looking at an almost a week turnaround to go back to the job site and pick up the check from the client or wait for it to come in the mail. Whereas he was cleaning up the job site, he sent the invoice from his phone, and the client came out and paid him while he was loading up his truck.
There we go. I mean, look, I think we're getting the unanimous thumbs up for Sage Accounting, which is brilliant to hear. Right, I have one last question for you, because unfortunately, as I said, we're sort of at our last couple of minutes, 5 minutes now. One last question from me. So just to sort of summarize, we've had a lot of value, I think, in this conversation. But if you were to break it down and just to summarize a quick tip, if you will, to a fellow bookkeeper looking into automation processes, what would it be? Bianca, maybe you can take that first.
Number one step, just digitize the documents, because if you can get all the documents digitized, hopefully by your client, then you as the bookkeeper have the power to do whatever you need to do with that content that fits your needs, your skill level, your confidence level, any of those things. You determine what you do after that. So if you can just get the documents digitized, then you have the freedom to choose your own vessels of apps and softwares and whatever else you need to do. Yeah.
Fantastic. So we got start with digital. Sarah, maybe you can share some of your wisdom as well.
Pick your easiest client to start. Pick someone who is a millennial, who uses their phone for everything. Somebody who is like a smaller business, maybe only has a handful of receipts. Go easy, and also don't be like, so many bookkeepers are so afraid of change and so afraid of changing the way they've been doing things and for years. And trust me, I was afraid, but man, do not regret pushing through that fear. I pushed through a lot of fear, and I know, Tom, and Rachel and Jamie know how much fear that I have pushed through over the last couple of years by moving to an automated process. And I'm so much happier because I did.
That's amazing. That is wonderful. And last but certainly not least, Janet, what's a tip that you could share with fellow bookkeepers into that are looking at tech?
Well, I guess if you're still on the fence about moving to the cloud, just keep at it and keep moving forward and take little bit baby steps, and eventually you're going to get there. And I know that's where we need to be. So just keep at it.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely. Well, look, everyone, that concludes this panel discussion. A huge thanks from me. I've been in this industry for about 10 years now, but I've learned a huge amount from this. So I'm really confident, as I said at the beginning, that everyone listening has been able to get some great value from this as well.
Thank you.
For those of you listening, though, please do hang on, because we do have a few minutes to answer some of your questions. So if you do have any questions, just drop them in the question and answer box as well. And if we can't get to them for whatever reason today, please feel free to visit our digital booth, and one of our team members will endeavour to answer those questions. So again, thank you very much to you guys.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No worries at all. We couldn't have done it without you by any stretch. But a quick reminder, tomorrow we do have another session. We have our very own Rachel Fish, and she's going to be presenting findings of Sage recently released Practice of Now report. So that's a report spoken to 3,000 accountants and bookkeepers. So again, there's going to be a ton of value you can all get from that as well. So with that, we all will bid you farewell. And yeah, thanks very much.
See you later, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.